Okay, so good afternoon. As you all know, I think you all know by now, my name is Amelia Matucci. I am the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania School Counselors Association. And I just want to welcome you to this month's edition of Chew on This. This is a lunchtime professional development program that we began a few years ago. For those of you who are limited on time during the school day, as we all are, this provides just, a short 1 minute, 1 hour preview of some professional development for you during the day. I wanted to, before we get started, just talk about a few things that are coming up with PSCA, and then I will turn it over to our speakers. So the first thing that I wanted to let you know about is that National School Counseling Week is coming up, of course, February 3rd through the 7th. And this year we have really, as PSCA, we have put a great focus on building school counseling programs, just because, we have legislation out there that we're hoping that will pass called the School Counseling Services Act, which would mandate comprehensive school counseling programs for all schools in Pennsylvania. So we started the year partnering with PDE to offer symposiums based on each domain, academic, career, and social emotional domains. And then we had our annual conference. The theme was Flip the Script, again, talking about our programming. So we've chosen as a theme for National School Counseling Week, building programs to build brighter futures. So I want you to just be looking out. As a PSCA member, you will be receiving communication from us about we're having a selfie challenge that you will be able to enter, and we'll spotlight certain members throughout all of National School Counseling Week. We want you to let us know how you're building brighter futures. Like last year, we will have prize giveaways each day of National School Counseling Week for anyone who enters. So you'll receive information on how to do that. Once again, we will receive the governor's proclamation about National School Counseling Week and recognizing that in Pennsylvania. And then we'll also be sending you information on more ways to become involved in PSCA, because our association is only as good as our members. And so I want to encourage all of you to become more involved. The next thing that is coming up is our Chew on This for next month, which will be during National School Counseling Week on February 5th. And the focus of that program will be on school counselor preparation. So we're helping to build better futures for our profession with that one. And we want to encourage graduate students and counselor educators to attend. That one will have a roundtable discussion through a panel comprised of school counselor educators. So spread the word if you have any interns, or if you are a school counselor educator within a university. We would like to encourage everyone to attend this one next month during National School Counseling Week. And then looking ahead to March, we will have our spring virtual conference on March 21st. And again, building on that programming theme for school counselors, we are calling this one Pulling It All Together. And if you take a look at the Ask a National Model graphic, you can see how everything pulls together to provide programming for our students. The member cost will be $50 to attend that. And we also will be holding our annual business meeting during that spring virtual conference. And if you want to attend just that, that's for members only, and that is free to attend just the business meeting. If you are not a member, and I do need to change these dates because these were last year's dates, we will have early bird registration open through March 7th, and that'll be $75, or after March 7th will be $100 for non-members. For members, the price is $50 no matter when you register. So be looking forward to all of that information coming to your email. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up for the spring. So now what I would like to do is I am actually going to turn this over to the Professional Development Chair of PSCA. She is a high school counselor within the Philadelphia School District, and her name is Dr. Christina Green. So Christina, please introduce our speakers today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today to learn about our evaluation tool for the state of Pennsylvania school counselors. And I am honored to introduce our two very, very knowledgeable school counselors who will be bringing you information today about the Danielson model. We have Dr. Jennifer Kirk. She is in her 13th year of being a school counselor and is currently serving as a counselor curriculum leader. I'm sorry, you have been a counseling curriculum leader for 13 years, and this is your 27th year as a practicing school counselor. Woo! You don't look like you've been doing it for 27 years. Absolutely not. You're only 27 years old. She also works as a counselor educator, as a consultant with Counselors for Computing. And Dr. Kirk has presented locally, statewide, and also nationally on a number of topics related to school counseling. She has and continues to work diligently to advocate for all students and create inclusive environments to allow all students access to positive outcomes. Dr. Kirk has served in various leadership roles and has been awarded the 2014 PSCA High School Counselor of the Year, 2018 Duquesne University Counselor Supervisor of the Year, and was a 2019 Counselor Board Recognized Counselor. Okay, next we have Mrs. Karen Rubicam, who is our school counselor advisor for Pennsylvania Department of Education. A fairly new role that a lot of us are extremely excited. Now we finally have a school counselor at the state level. How exciting. So this is Ms. Rubicam's 16th year working in the field of school counseling. Mrs. Rubicam demonstrates significant knowledge of counseling theory, best practice, and also comprehensive school counseling based on the ASCA national model. Mrs. Rubicam has presented locally, statewide, and also nationally on a wealth of topics related to school counseling. Ms. Rubicam is our school counselor representative, diligently working to advocate for what we do at the state level, and has served in various leadership roles and continues to be a leader for PSCA and also across the state of Pennsylvania. Welcome, welcome, and I'm turning it over to the both of you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share our screen here.
I already had the faux pas. I started talking, Karen, and I was muted. So there it is. We've been doing this Zoom thing for a few years now, every time. It is really great to be with everybody today. Our title today is Destination Distinguished School Counselor Evaluation using the Educator Effectiveness Model. Karen and I will banter likely during our time together today. We have been presenting together for nearly 2 decades on various topics. We get a little excited about school counseling, so you may see that come out of us at this point. But who doesn't get excited about evaluations, right? I hope you're chuckling out there at home because I do aim to entertain. Again, my name is Jennifer Kirk. Thank you, Christina, for the great overview of who I am and the work that I've done. I would just add, I'm also really excited to talk about this topic because when this tool was developed and put together, I was really proud and honored to be asked to co-lead that work with Karen, who's presenting with me today, along with an amazing team of professionals to ensure that our work and what we're evaluated on is reflective of providing systems and services to students that are equitable.
And I'm Karen Rubicam. I'm thrilled to be with you and to really think about how we can use our evaluation tool as a way to self-assess and set goals for ourselves as counselors. We're doing really, really hard work, and it's really, really important work. And nobody wants to do it in a way that isn't fully effective for students and for yourself. So this is, I think, going to be a really great conversation. Please use the chat feature. There's a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. This is about what you need to be successful in the work you're doing. So hit us with what you have. Today, we're going to talk about the evaluation timeline for school counseling. We're going to do a dive into the educator effectiveness tool, the school counselor rubric specifically, and then we're going to look at how we could consider developing a comprehensive school counseling program using backward design, taking the language that's in the evaluation tool and figuring out how that fits into the program and the work that we're doing in our schools.
Great. And Amelia, I think we're going to look at our first poll here. If you can pull that up for us. Oh, there it is. Awesome. Oh, it's the post.
Oh, that's weird. Okay,
Yeah.
try that again. Pre-test. Here we go.
There's a pre-test. So you got it, Karen. Great. Okay, so friends out there, if you could take a look, do your best. See what you got. There we go. Full disclosure, sometimes when I'm doing polls, I definitely pause for a moment to see what other people answer. It doesn't work well in Kahoot, because when you do Kahoot,
Right.
how fast you answer impacts your capacity to win. But I do, sometimes I'm cautious. Okay, friends, look at you. We're getting ya.
And nobody's saying 1947. And I'm going to say thank you for that, because I was involved in the first school counselor evaluation tool development. And my parents weren't even born in 1947. So
Great, we're at 80%. Good job, friends. Okay, I love the participation. We're up to 84% now. Almost there. Doing a great job. We know you're all at work trying to do this and be attentive to work. Maybe you're having a snack with us during this lunch hour.
maybe there's a student sitting across your desk wanting something from you.
Yes, we
I
know
think
how
that's
to-
happened to me a time or two on webinars. They don't get the sign on the door that says occupied. So, all right, so Act 13 was signed in what year? And then we have schools must use the school counselor evaluation rubric, true, false. We'll give it just one more minute.
Mhm. We're just about there.
Almost there.
A few more folks. Looks like a couple can't get, technology is the best. It looks like a couple folks can't get their answers to post. So
Selfie from
maybe-
Catherine.
yeah,
Catherine, were you part of our webinar this morning? We had a college counseling education program webinar that is supported by PACAC and PSCA. That was such a fun morning. All right, we're going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first answer, 2014, was the correct answer. Act 13 was signed in what year? 2020 was the correct answer. So the first evaluation tool is based on Act 82. And then schools must use the school counselor evaluation rubric. Yes. Amanda has joined us. Amanda, do you want to hop on and say hello?
Yes, hi. I don't know if you can see me or not. I'm in my car.
Hello.
I'm so sorry. I'm traveling. We're traveling to Butler, but hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you just briefly introduce yourself and tell them what your role is at PDE?
Yes, thank you so much. So my name is Amanda LaRue. I help support Act 13 and educator effectiveness. I help approve all the reports. I help educate the LEAs, etc. So I am here as a resource for you. I might have to break away because we are traveling to Butler because we have the National Rise winner, which I also support with. Yes, super exciting. But I wanted to make sure I could introduce myself and be a resource for you all.
Wonderful. We're so grateful that you took the time to be with us today. And for everybody watching in your schools, she made sure that everything we said was right. So we definitely appreciate the collaboration with you and the chance to think about how we can inform our practice using this Act 13. So thanks so much. Are you good with hanging out and popping in if you need to?
Yep. I'm gonna listen in. I'm still waiting for we're carpooling, so I'm waiting for my other people to arrive.
Okay, super. Well, thanks so much. And if anybody has questions, she has access to the chat and can respond in the chat. Thanks, Amanda.
Great. Thank
All
you
right,
so much.
so the polls, I think we finished that. Do the schools have to use the evaluation rubric? Yes. There is a process for having that waived, but no one's done it for school counselors. So yes. Thanks for participating in our poll. That was fun.
Mhm. Okay.
All right, now we're gonna move on. So is this you or is this me?
That's
I don't
you.
know what this is. Okay, so
It's
the
us.
evaluation timeline, we kind of talked about it, 1947. Thank you for not saying that. I feel like we think about the evolution of school counseling, and certainly the Ask a National model being introduced in 2003 is a big deal. That was an opportunity for school counselors and the people that support school counselors and value us to think about what that work should look like. So there was some aspiration to it. It was best practice. I don't know about you, but prior to 2014, and even maybe a little bit after 2014, when I was evaluated, it was based on the teacher evaluation tool that the district was using, right? And
Same.
if you want to react to that, if you know, hearts or however you would want to, react to the experience that you had, I wish I could do sound. It's like that tumbleweed blowing in the desert. Like that was what it was like to be evaluated as a counselor because nobody gets what we do.
They don't.
Act 82 of 2012 was a chance to say there's groups of counselors in Pennsylvania. You have to evaluate them. There's a process that you need to have. And so there was a work group put together, and I happened, like, this is my little, I don't know what it is, but I was the only public school counselor on that work group from the beginning to the end. There were
Mhm.
people that were pulled in at various points. At the end of it, PSEA was asked to give feedback, but they had what they did was they brought people to Patton in Harrisburg, and they said, "Here's Danielson." We got kind of like this little bit of a deep dive into Danielson, and then we thought about what that would mean for our specific roles. And I was in a room with FBA folks and with school psychs and with nurses and a bunch of different people that were educational specialists in the Commonwealth to do that work in their specialized areas. So the work group happened. The evaluation was published in 2014. And then in 2020, Act 13 was passed. And Act 13 basically revised the evaluation process, tightened the evaluation process, and more work groups happened. That was during the pandemic. And as Jen indicated, she and I were both on the public counselor side co-leads. We were not co-leads for the department. We were co-leads in the field. So, thinking about what that meant for us as counselors. And then the Department of Ed did a wonderful job in creating what we now know as the evaluation tool.
And just a caveat and small story when it comes to this timeline. As Christina mentioned, I'm in my 27th year as a school counselor, and I will just be fully transparent and share that I definitely called myself the G word when I first started. I'm so sorry I did that because that's not what I was. I wasn't a guidance counselor, right? I'm a school counselor. So we want to make sure like we utilize this tool to leverage that. And it's something that I was able to utilize with my administration back in 2014 as we move forward. We now are looking at this building level data slide that you can see here, and you can see the changes that happened from Act 82 to Act 13, right? You can see that work there. And you can see the checks that are really different. And the key points of difference here that if you take a look at this slide that you can see is around one, a reduced emphasis on building level data, right? A reduced emphasis on that data. There's that challenge multiplier down there that speaks to your actual population of students. And then there's flexibility in measuring student performance. And so those are the key pieces that were really changed when Act 13 was put together. Now, Karen's moving that slide. I think she might be frozen on her video. Karen. Dr. Green, can you hear Karen?
Can you hear me? I'm frozen.
I can hear you now. I can hear
Okay.
you now. Yeah, you were
So,
frozen. Now I can hear
Yeah,
you.
it's never a good look when you're frozen on screen.
You
Um,
want to turn your camera off and then back on. That
I
sometimes
can't.
resets
It
it.
won't let me.
Oh, no.
I can close the program, but I think you'll lose the presentation.
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
waiting. I just turned off my Wi-Fi on my cell phone. And but if you can hear me and you can see the next slide, did that work?
Slides are working. I can hear
Okay.
you, I have to tell you, your frozen face just looks very serious. So you're good.
Okay. Well, I just feel super bad. It's not a great look for me, but so so the toolkit, I hopefully I didn't advance too far.
No, you're
Okay, so you talked about this one. So the
We did.
toolkit is available at the SAS website. So I first have to just say what a great tool and resource SAS is. So it's pdeses.org. If you can get to that site, it's a free account. Please do that because it is a wealth of information for school counselors and for a lot of other people in your building. If you do that, you're going to find the Educator Effectiveness Toolkit housed. And there's reflection templates, there's resources, the framework is there. There's all kinds of things you can see on the screen, like a screenshot of all of the things that are available for you. And it's truly, I kind of view it as a one-stop shop, right? It's just a great resource. And I do have to, while we're here today, plug the professional learning community for school counselors. I'm at 397 people. There are 63 of us joined here today. If all of you that haven't joined yet join my school counselor community, that would be tremendous. So when you go into SAS and you register and you look at this really great resource about educator effectiveness, also please take a look at the professional learning community for SAS.
And good, slides are still advancing, so we're good. Okay, great. So evaluation and weighted rating areas. You can take a look here. This is what it is for Act 13 now, right? And when you scroll through there on the left, you can see different professional employee. Oh, we lost our screen.
Okay, we lost Karen
Lost
altogether.
Karen. This is super
Okay.
fun. It never fails in webinars. So she'll be logging back in momentarily. But what I can talk to you about with regard to what's about to reappear when Karen rejoins us is around the different categories that exist. And the weighting is around observation and practice. There's building level data that's considered and some other LEA selected measures. When you look at the practicing professionals that are full-time in the building, school counselors are at 90% for observation and practice, whereas the bulk of our partners, our educational partners in the building are actually at 70%. And so observation and practice, rightfully so, right, is the bulk of what we're evaluated on when we're sitting with our supervisors. The other piece is that building level data that I mentioned earlier. There are some great resources available that can help us do some practice on this. I'm sharing those in the chat and they may not be transferring as links, but I'll copy link. You should be able to take a look at these. One, the blank Act 13, that allows you to demonstrate your scoring. So you can take a look at that and use it as like a worksheet. And then that PVAS help to general help where I'm sending you provides you with feedback on accessibility, email configuration, some e-learning opportunities that are on the SAS website, exporting data, managing your account, printing templates and resources. Another plug really to have you get on that SAS website.
So when you go into the frameworks, this is the landing page for the educator effectiveness tool for school counselors. So one of the things that I just need to shout out for PD is just, first of all, how visually appealing all of this is. The layout's beautiful, as you're going to see demonstrated. And it's just really very impressive. So, but this is what you're going to be looking for when you access the framework.
Okay, great. So non-teaching professional, that's who we are. I don't know how everybody out there in our audience feels, but how often do we go to professional development and it's always teacher, 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 teacher. I get it. They're a greater majority of the people in the building. And there are pieces that we need to go to for training, but we are in fact the non-teaching professionals and we have some other needs. And so that's why there was so much energy and direction put into ensuring that the evaluation tool looked different for us and was appropriate, right? While this is not a comprehensive list, there may be many other roles falling within this category, but what you can see up there is professional employees or temporary employees who are education specialists, that's our certification, educational specialists, or provide services who are not a classroom teacher. And so we live in tandem in a lot of ways with our other friends, speech and language, social workers, homeschool visitors, our school psychologist friends, a health specialist, instructional technology, all of the folks that really are in the fabric of the school community, but not necessarily full-time classroom teachers, right? And there are so many of us. While not comprehensive, we can keep adding on to this. You can see where some of our friends live. And so I know when I am at professional development sessions, I sometimes am drawn to my non-teaching professional friends because we have similar experiences.
So the keystones of the school counselor framework, I think really resonate with us as school counselors. So these should not be things that would be unfamiliar to us. The idea of equity, it is very present in the framework. Career development, of course, social emotional learning, culturally responsive practices, mental health. You know, that idea that this is for every student and every system that we work in. And of course, the Ask a National model is infused.
And I don't know if I cut you off, Karen. The layer I wanted to add to that is, this is your evaluation tool. And what I know to be true, and we all have experience in various ways, some of these content areas are debated, are challenged. And the reality is, we as school counselors, if we want to get to destination distinguished, we must have high-level programming, consistent practices, and service delivery that speak to these keystones. And so this rubric that is out there for us is a tool to ensure amazing programming that's comprehensive through the lens of all of these pieces here, while also protecting us in the work that we do.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay, so domains by role, here we are. So we talked about this a little bit already, right? We have classroom teachers, our non-teaching professionals, and we have our principals and school leaders. And so when you look at the similarities and differences, I'm hoping that everyone in the audience feels good about where our 4 domains land. There are 4 domains for each of us in this Danielson framework, and there were some language adjustments that exist pending what our roles are. And so the differences are, we can see planning and preparation for both our classroom teacher friends and our non-teaching professional friends. And that really speaks to the need to be prepared, to plan, to have a vision and a timeline of the work. It also speaks to the fact that we are tier 1 instruction providers, right? We are indeed that. We do provide instruction. We also have environmental pieces. And so the classroom teachers, it speaks to classroom room environment. Our principal friends are systems leaders. And then we are talking about the educational environment as a whole. We are school counselors because we are infused into the school community. And we practice in a way that is proactive, systemic, and planful, right? As opposed to responsive services and maybe hanging out. Part of it, but not the full piece of what we do. But that educational environment, because we have to create spaces of belonging for all of our students across the school system. And then that third piece there, that third domain, our classroom teachers are at instruction, principals are pushing on the other side, leadership for learning, and we speak to delivery of service because while instruction is a piece of what we do, it is one place where we land. Our delivery of service crosses many platforms in our work, and so that frame is there just as. And then we have professional responsibilities, we have development, and then our principals create a community of leadership, right? And so our PD, which I love, that 4th domain, ensures that we are present, that we continue to stay the course, that we are always receiving education, and that we're modeling lifelong learning for our peers as well as our student population.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also speaks to how much changes in the work we do. And we have a responsibility of staying current with best practice, with trends, with research, and with supports that would benefit students and families.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's been around as long as me, I know what I was doing 5 years ago looks really different now, and even from 3 years ago. And I think at that time when I started working back in 1998 as a school counselor, so things are different.
Right. So some of the features of the counselor evaluation tool are components of practice, discussion prompts, evidence of practice, and there is a domain rating skill embedded. And so now we're going to look at each of those pieces.
Okay, so our first piece here, the components of practice. So each of the 4 domains that I just rolled through are supported by specific components of professional practice. So let's call it a drill down, right? They are distinct but interrelated. So you can find ways to overlap all of them. Everything is connected. We should keep in mind when we're looking at the components that they aren't necessarily applicable in every situation. I've definitely talked with my colleagues through, it feels very thick, this document. There's a lot in there, and going through and taking notes or working with interns, right? Trying to say, well, how do I meet all of these every time? And the reality is it's a holistic approach and ensuring that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, but also recognizing that it's a flow. This piece really, again, allows you to know what your steps should be as a drill down from the domain, and can guide the decisions you make with regard to the work, the service delivery. The tool has wonderful drill downs that we're going to get to in a moment that really guide you and give you feedback on the steps you should take. Because I do know sometimes I feel overwhelmed, like all the work that has to get done. And when I look at it through the lens of this rubric, which is in alignment in so many ways with those primary keystones, that it really just can guide my practice to be best practice.
So we look at discussion prompts, and I think it definitely bears mentioning that most of us in the position of being evaluated are being evaluated by people that don't know what school counselors do necessarily, and haven't perhaps been a school counselor. So the discussion prompts provide a platform for conversation, which I think is just so powerful. So this, we're looking at domain 1, planning and preparation. The first component is demonstrating knowledge of counseling theory, best practice, and techniques. There's a little statement about what that looks like for counselors. And then the prompts describe your familiarity with the ASCA national standards. There's a good chance that your supervisor doesn't know what those are. So this is a chance for you as a counselor to inform them about these resources that are coming from ASCA, and how they're utilized in your work in your schools. It provides a way to have a conversation. Now, this again isn't the only way to have a conversation. You can certainly ask your own questions, or ask and have them ask their own questions, but it's a good place to start. And I think that that's a really valuable component of this tool.
Great, and that takes us to evidence of practice. And again, we're on domain 1, demonstrating knowledge of counseling theory, best practice, and techniques, as well as a little descriptor there, like we had on the last slide. And then there are options there to look at evidence of practice. This is to give both you as a school counselor ideas about what could fulfill this component within domain 1, just to give you some guidance and some guidelines. Additionally, for practicing school counselors, I feel like this is one of the best communication tools you can use with your supervisors. Some of us have supervisors that are former school counselors or work in student services. Some of us have principals that are very engaged in learning about the school counselor profession. Pending your supervisor, though, you may be the only access they have to a school counselor, and much of their lens and experience is based on their own experience as a student, or their experience with previous counselors. And with this in place for pushing 5 years now, 4.5, this becomes a great training tool almost. And we'll talk a little bit about how we advocate for ourselves, because I find this rubric to be a great advocacy tool every time I talk with my supervisor. And so some of the evidence of practice you can see there are communication logs. This would be your emails or letters, any conversation that you've documented, summation reports, lesson plans. We all have them. That fulfills this component. Any projects, portfolios, any PD plan that you have, program presentations. I know many, if not most of us, have a layer of responsibility around career and education work standards. That alone will fulfill this requirement. And I know the people are doing lessons and or teaming with their classroom teachers on that. And so you already have all of these pieces in place. It's a matter of knowing what to pull as an artifact or to speak to when you're being in your supervision meeting.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't exhaustive. So I think that's kind of a consistent message. This isn't all you can produce. You don't have to produce all of this. but it's really just kind of it provides an idea of what you could be looking at. And I think as a new counselor, you know, if I were starting out now and I knew about this tool, this would tell me, oh, I should be doing quarterly reports. I should be doing an end of year summary on what happened this year. I mean, when we think about how important data is, this helps us frame maybe how we talk about data with our administration.
Yeah, and the one other piece I'll add to that, friends, I have worked with 18 different principals or assistant principals. I have worked in 2 districts and within 1 district, 2 buildings. So math that a little bit. Again, that's what happens when you're around for a while. But I've had principals I've worked with who it's their first assistant principal position, and their experience looked a little different with their school counselor, or they didn't engage with their school counselor. So this has been a great way. Like every time I've had a new principal come on in some of our orientation and transition meetings, I do utilize this rubric as a training tool for them when they're coming in to really ensure that we're they're accurately informed, and to 2, build some collaborative energy with them. That is them seeing me as a leader and advocate as well.
And then we look at the ratings by domain. So again, we're staying with our domain 1, planning and preparation. And you'll see here there are 4 categories, starting with failing, which I remember that being a conversation back when this was all being thought through and developed. So failing, you demonstrate little or no understanding of your discipline relative to individuals and or system level needs. Service delivery outcomes are not clear, not measurable, and do not represent relevant goals. Then we move through needs improvement, through proficient, and we get to distinguished, where it talks about extensive understanding of your discipline relative to individual and systems level needs. It speaks to service delivery outcomes being clear, measurable, and represent relevant goals. And there definitely is a hierarchy of language as you move through the rating scales. So when you think about, and we're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about how we can do some self-assessment and kind of get a sense of where we think we are in this process. But this really kind of allows you to think about, I'm learning and growing, and I'm changing, and I'm working to do the very best job I can do. What are some things I can work on right now? Looks like goals would be a good thing to work on right now. You'll see that it was adapted by PDE with permission from Charlotte Danielson, and then it actually cites her textbook, her book. So if you were interested in learning more about Danielson, you have the place to go to do that. So there's a domain rating place. You can self-assess, your administrator assesses, and then that all gets added up for your actual evaluation.
And I would add one other layer to that. The conversation amongst my circle and in my school community is, hey, we live in proficient, we aim for distinguished.
Right.
And every time I'm like, do you know school counselors? We want to live in distinguished. So everyone I talk to is a school counselor, right?
Right. And I have to say that was something that was talked about back in 2013 when we were working in that first work group. Danielson talks about visiting distinguished, not living in distinguished.
Mm-hmm.
And we think about the work we're doing. And one of the things with ASCA that Jen will talk about is there's an element of continuous improvement, right? So you see those arrows and you're defining what you're doing, you're managing it, you're delivering it, you're assessing it, and then you're redefining it and remanaging it and redelivering it. And it's just this idea that we are continuing to always think about how we improve. So when we think about distinguished and we've gotten distinguished, we've got to up our game to stay in distinguished.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say?
I think that's very fair to say. And, when I look at that rubric and we read through that, and you all maybe have had eyes in the whole document or you're going to soon, when you look at what distinguished looks like, all I can think of is that's me saving kids' lives. That's me doing career development with kids. That's me helping them secure their futures. That's me articulating a K-12 comprehensive program. And so for me as a school counselor, that's how I see that. So I consistently aspire to that, because at the end of the day, if I can manage to get myself to distinguished because of my work, that means I'm doing the best things for kids. And that's why we're all here. So Karen did a great job talking about the arrows. And so it doesn't stop, and everything impacts everything else. We're always going around this diamond, right? It's always and that's what we do. We're always reflective. And you think through the lens of, dare I say, computational thinking. When you check something out, you define it, you try it, you work with it, you reflect on the bugs, and then you reprogram yourself. And that's what this looks like. I have some notes here to ensure I don't leave out of the really important pieces, to make sure that team on the call here all hears, because we have like 68 people here today, which is amazing. What we know to be true is that this is a crucial resource to help us deliver services, build systems, and consider data. When I first started in the school counseling profession, I didn't really understand the importance of that. It informs everything I do now, because I can make up some really great stuff to do in my school counselor work. That being said, I want to ensure the great work I'm doing is meeting the needs of my students, right? And so this national model from ASCA emphasizes this 4 interconnected pieces, right? And so define, that looks at the role of the school counselor, looking at our competencies, looking at our ethical standards, while also looking at student standards, ASCA mindsets and behaviors for student success. Always a mouthful, but utilizing all of that to inform where we're living, right? If we look at manage, we're focusing on program planning and the organization of that. In addition, we are looking at tools, annual agreements, data assessments, calendars to ensure we are in alignment with our school goals. Delivering, okay, so that's our service delivery, describing implementation through direct service. That could be individual counseling, group counseling, classroom lessons, as well as indirect services, collaboration, and referrals. And then we're assessing all of this that we pulled together for ourselves, analyzing our program outcomes, our own performance, ensuring our continuous improvement, something you heard Karen say already, and ensuring it's in alignment with our student needs and school objectives. And so we're using that data to inform our practice. So it's a constant moving piece. While we aim to build that calendar, we are continually reevaluating it, right? And the work that's within that, that is the best practice we can have. And that does land us in distinguished. This symbolizes an integration of all the components, promoting equity, access, and success for each and every one of our students, which, if we pause for a moment and think back to the keystones and the pillars of what the rubric was built on, it was that. Well, I was getting fired up there, everybody.
Goodness.
I know.
So we had this really great idea about breakout rooms, but we don't actually have breakout rooms in our configuration here today. So what we would like to do is actually think about, and I guess we're going to ask you, I don't know if you're able to come off mute and talk, or if we're going to have to really rely on our chat feature. But
So,
we
yeah.
really would like to talk about, looking, downloading that toolkit, opening it up, looking at the components of practice and the evidence of practice for a specific domain, and then thinking about what you're doing, your evidence that you have right now, that would show where you might land if you were to be evaluated, today. And then think about, what are there tweaks that you could make to be able to put yourself in that range of distinguished. So Jen, what are our thoughts here about how we want to try to?
So I'm feeling like something we could make happen is, I know a couple of us could talk about the work that we're doing that have the stage here. I also do believe in chat that if somebody out there wants to put out there, hey, domain 4 PD, I'm doing this. Upon this conversation for the last 45 minutes, I might look at adding this layer or doing this differently, or just sharing some best practices, because we're all here to learn from one another today. How does that sound, Karen? Something like that. And I
Can
Go
I
ahead.
interrupt for a second? We can also allow people to talk. We do have that ability. So if anyone wants to put into the chat that they would like to say something, I can go ahead and allow them to talk.
Great.
Great. I mean, we know the tool's being used in different ways, but what we know to be true is we are to be evaluated on this tool, this rubric, right?
Right. So if you're very aware of the fact that you're using this tool, you've looked at it, it's informing your practice, could you send us maybe that little celebration pop thing? I don't know what you'd call that. Let's use that for our, the tools are, oh yay, there's some coming. The tools are that framework that Christina put in at 1238. That would be your, where you would access the framework for counselors.
So an example I can give is domain 4, professional development. I aim to land to grow and attend professional development, to present where I can, like today, because it helps me grow, and to consider moving into leadership positions. And so in professional development, if that's something I'm doing each year, I provide the evidence to my supervisors that these are the roles I'm serving outside of my school counselor role. And here's the professional development I've attended. And then they can use that as a platform to assess me. While we're waiting for some others to be brave enough to throw it in there, because it's tough to do this, we know. I can tell you, some years ago, when we were on the first iteration of the rubric, I was having my evaluation with my building principal at the time. And I have shared this very globally, and he knows I have. He gave me a 2 out of 3 in the, this was right actually after Act 13. He gave me a 2 out of 3 on professional development. And I got to tell you, friends, I was incensed, really incensed about that, because I was like, I feel like you don't know what I'm engaged in. And what I came to learn at that time was that I had done a poor job communicating how I was spending my time outside of our school, and where I was engaged. And so that changed my practice moving into my evaluations and doing a better job providing artifacts. I have to tell you, I did go to him and say, here's the rubric, here's where this lives. As a reminder, here are the things I'm doing. And he did change that for me, because I was proud of the work I did. And also, though, I learned how to better advocate for myself and the work that was happening.
Mm-hmm. There's a question in the chat. In order to be considered distinguished, do you think there's a certain number of pieces of evidence that you need?
I think that's a great question. I think, like is so often the answer in school counseling, it depends, number one. And when I say it depends, I think that would be through the lens of your evaluator, because they are the ones in many ways subjectively evaluating that. So what I do, and Christina Green, I know, has done some similar things, but I will go through the rubric and ensure that I have a little narrative for each domain about some of the work that fulfills as many of those components that I can within that. And it's not always all of them, but just to provide some evidence of what's happening. And it's pretty cool if you do your administrative contract with your principal at the beginning of the year, because that informs them ahead of time what you'll be doing. And so they have a better way of anticipating what's coming.
Christina, do you want to share your experience with utilizing the evaluation tool? And
Hi, school counselor's job is never done, and we have to split ourselves and multitask, right? So I have a bunch of students that came in because they have a deadline for our college and career readiness standards that we need to complete. So we have some students that popped in for a little guidance with that. Okay, so my experience with the evaluation tool, and I was trying to actually find this, Amelia, and I don't know if maybe you can provide me a little guidance as to where it can be, where it might be on Pennsylvania School Counselors Association website. But we had a resource that showed a examples of distinguished in as far as what we do as school counselors. And I was kind of working with some folks on what that might look like. So I literally refer to that tool that I downloaded a while ago, and I try as much as possible to do some of the items that are listed under distinguished. And it, this is a few years back, so this might even be a tool that we might need to find and maybe revamp and offer for all of you, since we're kind of providing professional development right now on this particular tool. But I want you to keep in mind, when you are being evaluated, you are, and I believe this is pretty much across the state, you're evaluated twice. So the first time you're evaluated, take a look at where you are evaluated, and then try to make growth for the second time that you are evaluated. Take a look at what feedback you received from your administrator and try to hit those particular distinguished marks for the second time that you're evaluated. When you are evaluated, your evaluation only goes up, it does not go down. Okay, so this is where you end up showing your growth. So pretty much what I in my particular school district, we have a standardized pre-conference tool where we are asked questions that actually align with the Ask a National model, which I am very, very proud that our large district hits the mark with that. So I go in, I answer those questions. However, when I meet with my principal, I am prepared to show evidence of the various things that I have done. So I've been in buildings where they actually ask me to provide evidence, if it's emails, if it's links to maybe different program that I've offered on my Google Calendar. If I meet with students, I try to put that on my Google Calendar so I can access it for administrators to take a look at. Any type of flyers that I've created as well. I just kind of print all of that out and have it at the ready. Now we're also in a very tech dependent world. So even if you want to kind of link it to some type of Google document so your administrator can kind of go through. Because the reality is a lot of administrators do not understand what we do as school counselors, or we do so many things behind the scenes that they're not even privy to what it is we're doing. Like, for example, I just got my evaluation. And I was like, "Ooh, this is very interesting." I got a few 3s, and I am very aware that my administrator has no clue. So I invited them to participate in this particular chew on this, and I'm also going to prove to them that I am involved with this process at a higher level. So I'm very knowledgeable. But I'm looking forward to the second time I'm evaluated for those 3s to bump up to 4. I've also had some admins say that they start you off at a 3, and then they'll, even if you're kind of operating in a 4, they want to show that there's some type of growth instead of you kind of being stagnant at the distinguished level. So what are some other things I want to say about that? So just come prepared to show your evidence of what it is you do. There's also a lot of things that we do that is of a confidential nature. So your administrator is going in and kind of observing you running a group. That's not always appropriate. So they're not going to necessarily know that you have a particular skill set, but also to make yourself available to do something that an administrator can evaluate you working with students, if it's a classroom guidance type of program where the level of confidentiality allows for an administrator to be there to observe you. I know I just said a lot. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I think it's great.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to share their experience of using the evaluation tool,
See Q&A.
the discussion prompts, the evidence of practice?
So I see, I did catch a note. Somebody dropped something in the Q&A. I believe in transparency, and I'm seeking that in development. I have to admit, I feel very humbled by the information that is being shared. Our school has a lot of growth in this process. What advice would you provide to an LEA who is behind in this process? That's a great question. And like I said, full disclosure, the building I work in now it's my 20th year in that building. And so this has been a team effort, movement, lots of engagement. So the place that I've been able to land in now as a school counselor, and with my team, has been a work in progress for sure. So it started, picked like 1 or 2 things I wanted to try really work on at the beginning each year, and then they became systemic. What advice would you provide to? Go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say it. Go ahead, you finish.
So what advice would you provide to an LEA who is behind in this process? And that actually gets to our discussion where we're headed in some ways, but it's really setting goals that are informed by your students' needs. And if you look at attendance, if you look at behavior, if you look at your students' outcomes with regard to their core achievement academically, that can really inform where you have some gaps. We were not doing work for attendance hardcore and ran some numbers this year. And let me tell you, we needed to do some work for attendance. And so we adjusted some of our service delivery this year based on the fact that a lot of our kids at the high school level that I work at sort of think school's optional still because they're functioning through the idea of COVID in some ways. It still haunts us, right? And so let's see, back to the LEA piece though, that data we used in our advisory council and shared that. The LEA was there. But actually just going through the rubric with them. I mean, just taking a look at that. And then I guess when we get to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how you can design those things.
Oh, and at the end, we have Amanda LaRue here from the department who oversees Act 13 and certainly would be a resource for LEAs. Maybe it's not you as a counselor who needs to get caught up. Maybe it's the administration. So know that the department is wanting this to be a good experience and successful for folks. And there is a way to get out of it, I guess I should say, but no one's done it. So you deserve a good evaluation and a way to be consistent about how that's all measured. Great conversations.
Great. And I think Dr. Green, Christina, you just answered that question. There were some questions about how are you, it seems like, wow, 3 times in 1 year. I'm observed, I have to have a formal, it's every 3 years I can do a project 1 year, or I have formal observation because of my years of service. But I'm generally observed pretty formally at least once a year, and I'm able to provide when that is because of the different, to Christina's point, like there's certain things I'm not going to have an administrator sit in on with me. But it depends on your school and the cycle that's there. Also, I will tell you that didn't always happen. Literally worked with my principal at the time he was evaluating, and we would just sort of meet once a year and he'd be like, okay, so it's going great. And so I actually had to do some advocacy to ensure that people were watching me and getting engaged in the work. Okay, so discussion here. And so this is something I see we're getting to time, and we always want to be respectful of that in people's work life, but think about these questions. What is it like to evaluate your program or work through the context of this framework? What does that look like for you? Are you using it to inform your practice? Or does it feel, sometimes it can feel like, how do I get to that? And it really should be flipped around. It just informs the work that you do. Do you have any sense of any changes you want to see in your counselor program or work? And then what support do you need? Support do you think you need from your colleagues, from administrators, to be successful in implementing these changes? And I'm at 12:58, so I don't know that we have time to go hardcore into that, but that's what you really want to reflect upon before you move into our next slide, Karen, you think?
Yes. I'm just trying to find the
I know. Too many
mouse.
screens.
So we're going to count down to distinguished. Domain 4, professional development, speaks to getting involved, and you're here today, which means you're involved. So get involved with relevant associations and networks, the Pennsylvania School Counselor Association, secondary folks, PACAC, you have ASCA, you have NACAC, PASAP. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for you, depending on what your passion is, to get involved. And all of that reflects well on Domain 4. Domain 3, delivery of service. Develop or refine your communication sources. When you think about how you communicate with families, and we had a conversation here about newsletters and trying to share the work and be advocates, which is hard for us. We tend to be very in the background and kind of quiet about all the things we're doing. But if we think about how we develop and refine those communication sources, that's a way to demonstrate Domain 3, delivery of service. Domain 2 talks about the educational environment. Jen talked earlier about how that's not just our office. That's anywhere you are in your building or community. But specifically about your office, is it inviting? Is it welcoming? Do students from a variety of backgrounds feel comfortable there? And then based on what that feedback is, maybe we're making some tweaks. Amanda's going to stay on to answer Act 13 questions if people have specific questions. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
And then Domain 1, planning and prep, review and update your resources. Things change. SOROR wasn't around 10 years ago, I don't think, unless it was just in the South 10 years ago. What are you offering now that you don't need to offer anymore? What's new and better? Review and update that and demonstrate that in Domain 1.
And this last, I'll be very quick with the audit. Take a look at your program, take a look at yourself, look at the rubrics, reflect. Decide where you want to land, decide what you want it to look like. And from there, you backward design, we finally got there, you backward design your program to reflect that. You don't try and have, you know, make this up as you go and hope it works. You take a look at that rubric, you look at the evidence examples that are there. You audit what you already got to see what fits in there, but you have it inform what you're doing in your school. And that really, I mean, it can drive you. There's comfort in having that, believe it or not, instead of just trying to go day by day and just making it happen.
Okay, and we're not gonna have time for the post test.
So you're trying to model best practice with the pre and post there.
Here's that list of resources. I believe you will be getting the presentation, so you'll have access to this. The very first thing is the email to the folks, including Amanda, who are supporting schools in the evaluation process. Links for PSEA, ASCA, the SAS website, and PDE.
Great.
Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for spending time with us.
So Amanda's going to stay on. If anybody wants to ask a specific question, she's willing to hear that from you. And we appreciate so much you being here. And I'm sorry for my technology issues.
No.
And bandwidth, I guess. That
Always.
kind of stuff. Always, right?
Always.
I did want to mention, I know people are logging out, but I did want to mention, I know there was a lot of discussion about distinguished, but it is absolutely okay to be in the proficient category. Yes, that is really truly the goal, right? That's your goal. And it's okay sometimes to be in the needs improvement. We, you know, as new counselors, you know, you can't come, please don't expect yourself to come out, you know, being distinguished. There's so much that is so complex about your roles. So I just wanted to mention that the frameworks are there for growth and reflection, and it is okay if you're not there yet, right? We always talk about that growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
We say it, but it's hard for counselors to be okay with it.
Sure thing.
So they asked for your email address. Are you okay if I put that in the chat?
Sure. My email, sure. Yep. And I really solely facilitate the resource account. So that's probably the best place to go. Email, just because when I go into the resource account, I am solely focused on Act 13. I have a lot of other responsibilities as well. So when they come in the general email, sometimes my mind might not be Act 13 focused.
Okay. I will put that in the chat. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. And I know there were some questions about how the frequency of evaluation, and I did try to put that in the chat that that's just determined by if you're titled a professional employee, which is somebody who has been granted tenure, which is done at a local level, or a temporary professional employee, which is somebody who has not yet been granted tenure. And that they're twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were some questions about goal setting too. And, you know, there are a lot of things that happen at the LEA level that may be a process that assists the evaluator in gaining evidence for the evaluation. But there are no specific goal setting component to your overall evaluation. I think there were some questions about an observation, and just wanted to note that observations are different than an evaluation, but a counselor could be observed if that was a method that the evaluator was trying to gain evidence for their evaluation, but it does not have to be the sole method to gather evidence. That certainly through conversations and meetings and parent meetings and phone calls, those are all ways that the evaluators are able to gather evidence to assist with the evaluation.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anything else for Amanda?
Feel free to drop the questions in.
And we got to thank you. So this has been tremendous. There's a Q&A. Let me see what's there. Oh, we might have answered it already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Everybody's time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jen, Christina, and Amanda for joining us today. That was a nice little surprise to have Amanda with us as well. Like Karen said, once she sends me her presentation, all of you who attended today will receive a copy of it. So the links in it are live, so you'll be able to click on any of those resources that she mentioned. And I also did put a link in the chat to our website and where the school counselor evaluation tool is located. But Christina, you're right. We should work together to add in some examples and some other tools that would be helpful to school counselors, and maybe Amanda, we can get together and you can help us with that. So
I'd
I
be
want to
happy
thank
to
you all
partner.
for. Thank you, Amanda. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We are going to go back, check the attendance. Anyone who attended for the majority of today will receive an email with an evaluation to complete. And once you complete that evaluation, you'll receive a certificate of attendance, and we will enter your Act 48 hours for you as well. So be looking for that email. And again, thank you to all of our presenters who joined us today. It's always good to hear from all of you and all of your knowledge that you have. And, I hope to see all of you back here with us again next month for our next Chew on This. So enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.